Step into the light where the wild ones roam, where the heart speaks loud, calling this place home. We break the rules, we paint the sky, ridiculously you. We were born to fly. Ooh, it's ridiculously you.
This is Ridiculously You, where authenticity wins, weirdness is welcome, and loving the messy parts of yourself isn't just allowed, it is required. I'm your host, Julie May, and this podcast is your weekly permission slip to stop playing small and start showing up fully ridiculously you. Today, my guest is the definition of multidimensional, from engineer to comedian to martial artist to business builder. Adam is a life systems engineer who helps people rewire their mind, health, and purpose so they can build lives that actually last. He's very into longevity, which is one of my hot topics right now. So let's get into it, Adam. Tell us, I want to hear just a little bit more about this transition thing, because you're like, okay, so I was a stand-up comic, and then I was like, hey, now I'm going to do an engineer. How did you go from this to this to this? Because I'm A, so relatable to me. And B, I think our audience wants to know, okay, so what makes you credible in the land of longevity and health, Mr. Stand-up comedian?
Right. Well, if you don't laugh, you're going to die a lot earlier. You got to have some fun in your life, right?
Yeah.
You can't take things too seriously. I think that's a prerequisite to life in general. Um, you know, there were these moments in my life that created automatic transitions. And that is, if you think about, you graduate high school, that's an end of a chapter, whether you like it or not, it's done. They're not going to give you a 13th grade to take. And then if you want to take more school, you go to college. And the same thing when college is over, you have to make some decisions. So I go to college, I go for engineering, systems engineering. I went to a really good school. I went to Virginia Tech. It was hard. I didn't even know what I got myself into. I showed up there. I'm looking around my class. Everybody is enthralled by, these coding classes, or, these finite statistical analyses and things that was just I was like, I will never use this. I'm never going to use this. But I was too far into it to turn back, so to speak. I would have had to take more schooling if I wanted to go and kind of take another route, say business, just to graduate and get it over with. It would have actually taken me longer than just toughing it out. And so that's probably a major lesson there, is that, sometimes you do got to just tough it out. You do have to work hard. You're not going to get anything for free. But that being said, this little nugget, I think, is one of the things that if you can find something to occupy your time, to occupy your soul, to let your soul really have an outlet, you can almost endure anything. And I almost think of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and kind of being stuck in a concentration camp. Far from it, is an engineering program, but it's tough, and you do feel somewhat trapped. And so, that is if it's something you're not super enthralled about or super good at. And what I end up doing is I end up walking into a martial arts school in 1998, and it just completely hypnotizing me. I watched these people doing Tai Chi in a room, a quiet room with hardwood floors and everybody moving in unison. And there just maybe some quiet music in the background, a breeze coming in through the windows, and just hearing people's feet sliding on the floor, just their maybe the fabric of their clothes moving, everybody breathing quietly. And, even as I describe it, I get more quiet, and it's just oh yeah, this is it. This is something different, something special. And so that allowed me to get through, kind of gave me, again, an outlet that allowed me to also focus on my studies. And all of a sudden now engineering wasn't as big of a bear. It wasn't such a problem as it was. And it's oh, I've changed my mental space. And, I'm late teens, early 20s, and I'm just kind of figuring this out. You know what I mean? Just this is life. This is, kids being thrown into stuff. They don't know what they're doing. And then my senior year in college, the summer before my senior year in college, I had gotten this idea. I really would love to try stand-up comedy. I think it would be fun just to try it because the martial arts kind of gave me confidence that I hadn't had before. And it made me think, and it might have been something that the teacher said, but like kind of just like considering what are all the possibilities in life, not just the finite ones that have been served up to you, but what are the possibilities that are out there for you. And I had always grown up listening to, and this was long before Bill Cosby had been outed as a horrible predator person. So unfortunately, as a kid, I grew up listening to all this Bill Cosby stuff, and I had all of it memorized. And I think
Oh
a lot
yeah,
of people,
same. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I can tell you the whole thing about Get on the Ark. I can tell you all
yeah,
about the
Noah, yeah,
chocolate cake for breakfast.
yes,
Like,
yes.
I know it all. This is the stuff I grew up on, dude.
Dentists tell you not to pick your teeth with any sharp metal object. Then you
And
sit in
then
their
you go to the
chair,
chair.
and the first thing grab is an iron hook. All right. So, it's like you're already being imbued with like a delivery, a timing, and things like that. And it's like, wouldn't it be amazing to make people laugh? And so the summer before my senior year, I had done like one or two open mics. And I was thinking, oh yeah, maybe I'll take an acting class my senior year in college just to play and try some stuff out. That was 2001. September 11th occurred. We watched
Mm,
planes fly into office buildings that were essentially the symbol of American capitalism.
yeah,
And we can and so many things that were big and bold and great about America, and also some things that are, maybe not as something to be as proud about, from a corporation perspective and big corporations and what they do and how they kind of just, are out there to suck dollars out of the world. But I see this happen, and my conclusion that I came to was basically when kids or adults, any age, people stop moving to a big city to pursue their dreams, then we really have lost something of our American dream.
oh wow, yeah, I
And
see.
yeah, and so I didn't think we needed to go chase weapons of mass destruction that had nothing to do with Afghanistan in Iraq, but that's what we did. That was what our
Hmm.
political military response was, which was like, what, why, what? No, but it was, how are we switching these two things? Why are we doing this? So, all politics aside, again, I'm like, somebody points a gun at you, you should put a flower in the end of it. You know what I mean? My parents weren't hippies, but I kind of get it. Like, it's like, let's not perpetuate war, does not solve war. It only makes more war.
Yeah.
Right. So I looked at it like this. I got this degree. I ground it out. I've got a, interesting perspective on life. The worst thing that can happen is I go to New York City and I keep studying martial arts, and like I'll just make it my excuse to go there is to study more martial arts, which I did. And I studied with some amazing masters from all over the world and was able to keep training the similar styles that I had studied in Blacksburg, Virginia, of all places. And I get to live in New York City. I get to drive a pedal cab as my first job because I didn't go up there with a job. And I'm pedaling a bicycle taxi all over Times Square, trying to make my rent. And then I'm doing open mics every night, two or three every day for years. And I wanted to get that first 100 under my belt. I got the first 100, I got the first 500. Um, and then from that, one thing led to another. And it was just like, well, if you're doing stand up and you want to also try to make some money, you should try to get into commercials. And if you want to get into commercials, you should do some improv. And so I took improv classes and I mean, I was like a kid in a candy store in New York City in the early 2000s. And then and I'm booking commercials, busy. Like I would book, I think one of every 14 auditions was the metric that I had kept, is that like every
Right.
14 auditions, I would get lucky and get picked and be the guy and get to do the thing. And
I love
so
how your brain is automatically still going back to this. You're good at math thing, and so we're keeping our stats. We know our percentages of rates here. We know, but we're applying it to stand up comedy, so it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
good.
Yeah, right. It's like if I've got to find some way to be successful here. So and excuse me, and you're up against thousands of people that came from all over. And some people, not some, a lot of people in New
Hmm.
York City are very talented. And comedy ends up being kind of a blue collar kind of thing. It's like they didn't go to Juilliard, or they didn't go to they didn't get the Yale School of acting or whatever. They didn't get to go to all the big names for their degrees, which do hold some weight in the theater world. So,
Yeah.
you gotta hustle. You gotta really put yourself out there more than the next person, or you're not going to be seen. So, um, I did SNL. I did some background in SNL. I did, a bunch of different shows, Curb Your Enthusiasm, just stuff that was shooting in New York. It's just like,
Yeah.
um, and everything's going great. I bought a BMW motorcycle. I said, like, I am living the dream. I am gonna be. I had a survival job as a personal trainer, and um, I would drive around on my motorcycle, and I would have my equipment in the back. Sorry, did I get that feedback again? I'm so sorry. Did you hear that?
Just one tiny little bit. It's
All right,
okay.
so sorry, so
We're all
sorry.
right.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm driving around, personal training, taking my martial arts kind of show on the road from a weight survival job perspective, as making money is concerned. And then the financial crisis occurred.
Yeah.
And the financial crisis really made people, oh shit, sorry. The financial crisis, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm so sorry.
Hmm.
I don't know what that is. Um, the financial crisis caused everybody to kind of reevaluate things and really give, their lives a second thought as to what they were doing or how they were making money. And, you know, the acting work dried up, the personal training work that I was doing as a survival job dried up, and that was, I was basically like, well, this is it. The dream is over. It's time to move back to my hometown of Pittsburgh, get a real job. I actually talked to my father at that time. He was a financial planner. I was thinking about going into financial planning in 2008, 2009. And he said, "No, that's not what I want you to do." Gosh darn it. I feel like this I'm totally screwing this up. This is
Oh, you're doing fine.
no,
Little
I feel
little
like there's
feedback here and there we're gonna live with. We got
okay, fine.
editors.
All right, fine. I'm so annoyed. Sorry about that. All right, so we'll get rid of that. Um, maybe I'll just turn this down a bit. So anyway, picking back up with the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, I thought, okay, I'm going to get a real job. I'm going to work for my dad. I'm going to become a financial planner. Life's going to be easy because I'm going to work under my dad and he's going to help me out. And, everything's going to be, you know, easy street and I don't have to worry. And he was like, no, you can't just, and this is where my dad probably excelled at things, is like the tough love and kind of giving me the hard route to take. It was
Mm,
like, if you want to do this job, like I can't hand it off to you. You have to start at the bottom and work your way up. And I talked to, this is where coaching I think is one of the most valuable things you can do. I talked to a friend of mine who was a life coach, and she said to me, "So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's a financial crisis. Everything's falling apart. Everybody's trying to figure out their life. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to move back to Pittsburgh and I'm going to work for my dad. I'm going to get this job in financial planning and work myself up from the bottom." And she's like, "Yeah, that sounds like a logical thing to do, but it when you talk about it, like your voice completely changes. Like it does not sound like you. It doesn't sound good." And I'm like, okay. And she's like, well, this is the best, probably one of the most valuable questions anybody ever asked me, was that she said, what do you want to do? What do you really want to do? And I said, well, I want to stay in New York. I want to keep doing personal training, keep doing acting. And she said, well, why don't you? Why don't you figure it out? And so that's when I opened a business. I opened Atomic Total Fitness, a personal training studio in Manhattan in 2009.
mm.
And that started off with a brick and mortar location that was just on 57th Street and Lexington. I, blood, sweat, and tears. I didn't have enough budget. I mean, basically, my folks gave me enough money to get a lease and put a couple months rent down. And that was all the help they gave me. And that was great. But that's not how you start a business, really. I mean, not in New York. You need to have
Yeah.
marketing, you need to have renovation. I had nothing. All I had was a few clients that were willing to come with me and some math I did on the back of an envelope. as to whether I could figure it out or not. And from 2009 into 2013, it was painful, painful. But nevertheless, I put the time in. I painted the walls. I upgraded everything. I kept the place super clean. I made sure there were decent, I got reviews on Yelp and Google as those things were kind of starting to really matter. And one bit at a time, I built it up to where I could at least make the rent. And then I got lucky. I made a connection through somebody that was at this company called Gilt, Gilt, Gilt City. And I basically ran a deal where I gave away, I was like 16 sessions for, they might have been $20 a session.
Hmm.
But I sold like 160 packages.
Right.
So I went from
Wow.
having like 8 to 10 clients to now I have 160 people I have to service. And they're like pounding on the door, like ready to give me bad reviews if I don't take care of them. So I hired a guy, and then he and I were do it between the two of us would do like 12 sessions each a day. We were doing 20, I think the peak was 25 sessions a day, hour
Wow.
long sessions. And we did that for weeks and weeks and weeks to get through these discount packages that we eventually then renewed people. And I have friends that I've made lifetime friends from that experience, people that became clients at that time. And, like I said, my father was a financial planner. I've always looked at fitness as an investment, as something that you put the time into. Um, Coaching is something that you invest in, you put the time into. If you want a transformation, you have to go out and get it, however that is. And if you don't know what you need to do, then you need to pay for it. And it's you get what you pay for. So, I'm a firm believer in which you are the one that is the catalyst for change in your life. You are the one that actually makes things happen, but you might need a catalyst to make that change occur. You might need just someone to help you kick over that first domino to get things going. And once you have, then you can sit back and say, "Oh yeah, look what I did." But meanwhile, you got help. You need help along the way. And so Atomic's going great. My fitness studio is going great. From 2013 on, nothing but growth, 10% or greater year over year growth from 2013 all the way up to 2020 or the end of 2019. And then, of course, we know what happened there. We
Yeah.
had a global pandemic. It became illegal to sit down face to face with somebody and have them give you a workout in New York City. And so everything I had built was handshake, face to face, referral based business, and that now completely evaporated. And I did everything I could to keep the place open. Did the PPP loans, took out an SBA loan, which I'll be paying back for 30 years. Um, it's a good low percentage rate, so we'll drag that out. But it's nonetheless, it's a big chunk that I have to pay back. And within a year, by the end of 2020, all the money was spent, and there was nothing to show for it other than that the decision needed to be made whether we're going to keep it open or not. I closed the studio, then kind of went into the this is where it can get dicey for people. If you have a really great constitution, if you have put the time in and you've done the personal work, and Carl Jung talks about this, so basically having an ego, having a concept of yourself that can survive the onslaught of what is thrown at you by life, then you will have the ability to basically anything becomes a win. No matter what happens, it's a win because you didn't crumple and fall apart. And so I go into the pandemic like, okay, yeah, this is going to be cool. I'm going to learn some stuff. Something new is going to happen, and I'm going to become this next, iteration of myself. Um, by the way, one small caveat, in 2019 in November, I did a solo comedy show on the history of fitness from the beginning of time. It was 30 minutes, standing room only, sold out, headlining event at the People's Improv Theater in New York City. And that was in November of 2019. So I never shut off any of the previous dreams that I've had. And I don't know if that's just unique to me, But it's also another thing that I would say to people is like, we're gathering these experiences. And yeah, you can throw stuff out, but you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you could just maybe get rid of elements of yourself. But if there's something that you really like, that you really believe in or want to hold on to, then, God damn it, don't let it go and fight for it, and hold that tight to your bosom. Right. So like this next phase that I go into from 2020 until just earlier this year was basically got to make money, put money on the table, food on the table for my family. I have two young boys, 6 and 8, and happily married, and just you know, there wasn't a clear direction as to what I needed to do, and I knew I needed to make money. So I talked to a bunch of friends. This is where networking comes into play. This is where my third pillar, tribe, is one of your superpowers. Like if you don't have people that you've connected with, that are going to get your back, you might want to start investing that time now because you're going to find yourself in a situation where it can help you out a lot. So end up getting a job in medical device of all things because I figured, hey, these guys make money. The hospitals are filled. The parking, everything else is closed. Hospitals are open. So that's a recession proof. That's pandemic proof. And I start working in spine surgery, watching. I was in 200 spine surgeries in 2 years, assisting surgeons, assisting scrub techs, and putting instrumentation into people's lumbar, thoracic, and cervical spine. And super intense. I mean, if you can picture somebody's loved one is on the table with their back cut wide open, and here's this guy putting screws in, and then he's asking me, why isn't the screwdriver working? And I have to say, oh, sometimes when it goes through the cleaning and it gets heated, it gets a little stuck. You need to jiggle it, bang on it, twist it. There you go. You got it. Right. And then the tension goes from, you know, 13 down to 11. Um, and that just wasn't for me. That's not where I need to be. I don't, it took away too much time from my family. It was not balanced. It didn't have soul. It didn't have what I needed to thrive and exist. And so there's no sum of money on the planet that would be worth me giving up myself for. And um, the longevity thing really started to speak to me. I read Peter Attia's book, Outlive, which he basically outlines how you're going to, you know, live to be 100. And we all are potentially. And then that's where we touched on this briefly before at the top of the show. But, I reached out to a financial planning friend of mine. I was saying, you know, I'm helping people live potentially 20 years longer and better. And I know that the number one thing that people are going to be concerned about over the age of 65, if they have their health, is do I have enough money to continue the lifestyle that I'm leading? In other words, am I going to run out of money? And how can I spend my money in such a way where every single transaction doesn't have to be me second guessing myself and, having the breakfast super slam at Denny's every morning isn't part of my financial plan, right? So,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. That's how we get to where we are here. I'm sorry if that was long and drawn out, but essentially I would say, how am I credible? I'm credible because every step of the way, I don't give up on myself, and it's trial by fire, and failing upward. You know, being willing to take another swing always.
So this is one of the things I find fascinating about you is I hear people who make like these big jumps and big leaps into different things. You get a crisis and you're like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna do this thing. And they'll be like, oh, because this is something I feel like I'm good at too. Like something big crisis happens. I have a plan like the next week. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, we're gonna shift, it's gonna be fine. And people will tell me all the time, like, oh, I couldn't do that because I have kids, I have a family, I have all these things. Like,
Yeah.
and you're telling me, and I additionally do too. But you're telling me you're doing all these shifts and stuff. You're married, you've got two kids at home. Did that ever play in the back of your mind as you're shifting into these different things? Like, oh, and I need to have the security for the family, and I need to have these other things. How did that, like, how did you balance that need to be the secure and stable and whatever for your family, and this idea of, and I'm going to go after my dream, and I'm going to do the things that are so fulfilling?
Excellent. Thank you. That's a very thoughtful question. And I think that there's no escaping that, especially if you have the responsibilities of a family and other people. Um, it wasn't like I was saying to them, I need to go do more stand-up comedy because that's where, my soul is most happy and free and comfortable, knowing that I would not make, more than $100, a couple $100 in a year with, doing something like that. And so it was, what are the most logical things that I can do? What's the most powerful thing that I can do? How can I possibly make a pivot, leveraging every resource that I possibly have? The medical device thing, it could have been great. Um, and that was definitely operating out of fear, because that was in 2021, and it was like, I just need to get a job that is not doing what I'm doing, because to try to get money from a personal training perspective and to try to do, say, acting work, which was also totally dead at that time. I ended up shooting something at the beginning of 2020 for, actually, like, Dr. Oz's website, and I was like doing yoga and like teaching people how to work out with soup cans. It was like teaching at-home workouts, like pandemic workouts. And it was like, okay, this is cool, but like, that's $1,600, you know, which is not small amount of money, but take out the taxes, take out the fact that there's a lot goes into it, and those jobs are not just like showing up. I would need to do, 10 of those jobs a month to be able to, cover my all my bills. And
Yeah.
so it's not about necessarily, and there's a lot of people that I know that are in the acting world that have held on to that almost too tightly, I would say, to their own peril.
Mm.
Like, their, like, identity is so attached to them being an actor that they believe that that's the only way for them to have validity, or for them to, if they were to stop doing it, it's almost like they've gone too far into it to turn back. But I would say you always are able to find the, look at what you have as far as your resources are concerned. What do you have? What is your constitution? If you're able to show up every day to a job, to an audition, to whatever it is that you're doing, that you're making your living, well, at the end of the day, you have to make that living. And if the job that you're doing isn't providing you with the lifestyle that you want, then you have to just look at, maybe it's not a reflection of you, maybe it's a reflection of the job.
Mm.
And that's why medical device wasn't going to work, because there's certain industries out there that are going to take you 10 or 15 or 20 years to establish yourself. And once you have, you kind of have a gold mine, but you also will never be able to do anything other than that. Not never, but you're going to be known as that thing. And so the longevity thing for me, I'm known more as a fitness professional than I am anything else. That's just how it's worked out. And when I really look in the mirror, that's the thing that I've devoted my most time to. It's not something that is foreign to me, or it is not separate from me. So I can use that as a base and as a foundation. And I do today. The majority of where I make my income is from doing personal training. It's what I've done since 2004. And it's not that personal training is something that I'm like, ew, I don't want to do that, or I should be doing this because I deserve X, Y, and Z. What I've noticed is that there's always certain industries are going to put a cap on your income. They're going to put a cap on how much you can make. And so when you're
Mm.
trading your time, and that's why I opened the fitness studio, I saw early on, I've only got so many hours in the day that I can devote to being with my clients. And so even if I work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is impossible, that would be, and then I set my hourly rate, that is the maximum amount of money that I can make. And although that might be a large sum of money for Adam circa 2008, 2007, for 47 going on 48-year-old Adam with two sons and a mortgage, and those two sons that potentially are going to go to college. I mean, I wouldn't tell them that they can't. I'd like to be able to I'd like to be able to afford the things that were afforded me,
Yeah.
you know? And so that is a very different number. And the way that you arrive at that is by providing value to the world. And the value that I offer in a personal training session, although I'm well compensated for those hours, is not what I feel I have gathered kind of, in my lifetime of experience. And so, how can I provide that value to somebody? Well, I can absolutely be a coach. I can absolutely help them navigate pitfalls and look at their life from a different perspective. And then beyond that, and I do have these four pillars where I look at aligning your life. I mean, supremely aligning your life, like becoming more organized than you ever thought possible. And I don't mean in like a obsessive compulsive way. I mean, not like, oh, what are your goals? Oh, my goals are like, I want to make more money and go on vacation next year. Like that's so bland. And most people, that's kind of where they're at. And I would say, no, like you want to be able to be the living embodiment of the vision that you have for yourself. And then when you're faced with a decision or you're faced with things that are supposed to be done, you don't have to blink. You say, that's who I am. That's what I'm all about. That's what we do in our family. This is how we make our decisions. And it starts to regulate everything that you do. Every breath that you take is in alignment with where you're trying to go. Get dialed in like that on your life and who you are and what you're all about. The rest of it, that's the big domino. Everything else falls after that because what you do, then you look at your physical vitality. It's very easy to see why you want to be in the best shape of your life and take those steps to do that. Then you look at your tribe or kind of the connections. I call it psychological, spiritual connections. And I don't back off from the word spiritual. For the longest time, I've studied a lot of things, very practical, very psychological based, and it would be psychological, social, but we're not going to say spiritual. But the fact of the matter is, we're human. The human being will thrive and integrate further into reality when there is a sense of purpose, mystery, uh, spirit, enigma, story, uh, connection to archetypes, whatever you use to access that side of things. And I don't care whether we live or die, whether we have past life memories or we live forever or we're parts of God, or I'll have all those conversations with anybody. But fact of the matter is, if you're going to wipe that away and say that that isn't even a part of your human experience, that's like the most saddest, most impoverished state that I can conceive of. And then beyond that, then we talk about, well, everything's lined up, you're rocking and rolling, you feel great, you're connected, you're building things in reality that are extensions of yourself. I'll give you an anecdote in a second, but then after that, you go right into, all right, what kind of financial legacy do you want to create? And I actually think of this more as heritage. What is the
Mm.
heritage that you're creating? In other words, heritage is where we're from. Legacy is what we're going to leave behind. But there's this continuum. And what I would like to be able to provide to other people is what I'm trying to provide in my life to my sons. And that is that there is a stewardship of money. Money doesn't just fall out of the sky. And there's a way that we behave around money, and not in a prim and proper way, but in a way that, like I was raised in a very puritanical house. You don't talk to people about money. You don't
Yeah.
ask, you don't ask what somebody, paid for that or whatever. And it's all very like money is this somehow weird, bad thing. No, this is how it's done in our family. This is the way things are set up. It's set up so that every generation we have more money than the previous generation. And if you don't behave up to kind of the code of ethics or the standards that we have set up, then you're not going to have access to that. Not going to throw
Mm.
you out in the street, but you're just not going to have the ability to do the things, like start a business
Yeah.
or, some of the luxuries I've been afforded and that have allowed me to fully be an individual and activate myself. And I will be the first to tell you, I was not spoiled at all whatsoever. I did not have a silver spoon. I grew up in a blue collar part of Pittsburgh, and you know, I watched friends of mine get addicted to drugs and not make much of themselves. And I mean, and that, or they made as much of themselves as they could, having given the opportunities that were provided.
Mm. So I want to touch on a couple of things you talked about there. One of the things you said earlier was how people kind of put an identity. They put an identity on acting, that's who they are. They put an identity on these different pieces of themselves. And I think when you do that, like when you are the job, when you are the thing you do, it is much harder to shift when a crisis happens, when
Yeah.
a life circumstance, when anything happens, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it may be a shifting time. It's like the universe going, you're out of alignment here, something needs to shift. You're going to hold on to that thing because it is you. So do you have any thoughts on how to separate yourself from the doing you do from the who you are? Because I think that would be a valuable thing as people are looking at doing like lots of shifting and lots of like if they want to, you talk about this word alignment within your like longevity. If they want to align everything with like their truest self, they've got to like start separating out what isn't them so that they can align in what is.
1,000%. And a, I'm doing a very deep dive right now into Carl Jung's archetypal psychology.
Mm,
And that I'm giving myself a little mini master's degree in that because it's something that I've always been fascinated with. What I've realized is, and that's not necessarily a framework that I use to work with people. Essentially, there's something that you need to do, that I need to do, that every one of us needs to do in order to keep progressing. And the 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 thing that needs to be done can only be arrived at through a conversation. So if we are, each person is their own, unique and unique snowflake of a person. Not to use that term as like as something that's like demeaning, but like we are absolutely unique constellations of experience and history. And ultimately, what I would want somebody to be able to do is to be able to shift these things naturally without it being a, um, like it's something that's being ripped off of them or taking away from them, or that they're not, that they're not able to part with it because it's something that's so dear to them that it feels like it's a loss. And there might be something that needs to be grieved in there. There might be something that needs to be let go. But at the same time, I think if we let go of some things, we're ultimately making space for the power that we need to be able to step into. We need to become fully ourselves, and anything we're holding on to, any block that we have, is something that is preventing us from seeing the deeper meaning behind that. And so, um, without being on a, standing up on a stump and preaching, I mean, ultimately, I would say to the person, what is it that you want? Why do you want it? Why do you want this thing? And let's go deep into that as to what it is that really makes you thrive. And then from there, if you're doing something, it almost appears to you, you know, on its own. You start to say, "Oh my gosh, this isn't even serving me. Like, what am I
mm,
doing?" And look, I'll be the first one to admit, like sometimes you got to bang your head into the brick wall a few times, before you go, oh, there's a brick wall in front of me. And if I just look around, I can actually go around that way. Or I found myself at the end of a dark hallway and there's no doors here. I guess I'm just going to go back the other way. Um,
yeah.
and I can tell you that miraculous things happen in your life when you let them. And this is, again, this is why getting into the mystery of things and not having to be so, again, our society says, well, I got all the answers. I just got to grab my phone, pull up ChatGPT. I'm going to get all the answers. But you're not, you're not going to get, but you're not going to get the mystical side of things that will allow you to. Here, this is the anecdote I wanted to give you. So I start doing all this personal work, and it wasn't just Carl Jung, but so I went on Chat GPT and I said, I want to learn all about deeper level psychological um, ways of liberation that don't necessarily have to do with me sitting in therapy, because I've done tons of therapy and it was great, but and I'm sure I could go back to it again. No blocks, no blocks. Anything and everything. Use all the tools in the tool belt, right? But I wanted to do this exploration because it was important to me to have a really deep understanding of. I really wanted to get into this thing about archetypes, because I've lived as this weird kind of connection to Chinese martial arts. When I started doing Chinese martial arts, I, like I said, I walked into that room, I saw everybody moving in that wonderful way. I was enchanted by it. I threw myself into it wholeheartedly. And then I allowed it to take over my life and follow it wherever it led. And so I've led this kind of archetypal path of the sage, and the jokester, and I think that's allowed me. Those archetypes have really allowed me to have almost like a, not an armor, but I mean it's given me the internal weapons to be able to deal with like a lot of heavy shit.
Yeah.
Um, and so I started studying this archetypal stuff in Carl Jung's autobiography, Dreams, Reflections, and Visions, Dreams, and Reflections, or something like that, as well as G.I. Gurdjieff, who is a mystic from the early 20th century, I believe. And he's very esoteric. But this is kind of what ChatGPT served up to me as like a curriculum. So I started listening to these two guys concurrently. And G.I. Gurdjieff is he's a wild guy. He's the kind of person that would like almost like force you into a transformation by doing something extremely like crazy or irreverent. Like he was on a train one time with somebody who was a client, and he basically then just started acting completely drunk and like smacking people and falling over and being belligerent. And it was just to try to elicit a response from his client that he was trying to help. And it's like, I don't know if I'm in that stage of things yet, but I will tell you this. I start doing this study, and two things happened within the past couple weeks that are just, I would call it miraculous.
Mm.
One, I bought a tree stand, which is for hunting. And I grew up hunting. I like hunting, but I don't live in a place where you can't go hunting in my backyard. I have neighbors, but
Right.
I have a bunch of trees and I have a bunch of woods. And I bought this tree stand and I put it up for the sole purpose of sitting 20 feet up in the air and staring out at the woods.
Mm.
And so I put that up, and then I took my kids up there one at a time, and they get to sit up there. And that's an experience that I'm having. It's a bonding moment with them, and it's absolutely lovely. I don't know any other dad that, at least in my neck of the woods, that did that. But any dad that does that is doing it for the same reasons. It's like connect with the child. And then I started looking at this pathway that we had. That's just it's a walkway that goes around the house, and it had sunken in. It was big kind of stone tiles that had sunk into the ground, and the grass was starting to grow over it, and you had to like weed whack around it. It was a big pain. It looked bad. And I started saying, all right, well, if I pry them up with a big bar, a pry bar, if I pry them up, I can reset them, put some gravel around it, it'll look nice. But then I started just looking at the house and kind of the direction of the lines, and where where north is, and where all the cardinal directions are. And I look down and I'm like, there should be a fire pit here.
Mm.
This should be a gathering spot for my tribe. This is where everyone should come together. This is the focal point of the yard. And my wife and I have been talking about where to put a fire pit, and we were, oh, tuck it over here, tuck it over there. And I said, no, this is where it has to be. And so I spent, the past 48 hours, Saturday and Sunday, doing nothing but digging up these stones, laying tile, putting a fire pit into the ground. I time lapsed the whole thing. Um, and yeah, it's a beautiful work of art that is in stone and in dirt. And I just mentioned those two things because that's the type of stuff that should start to happen. It's
Mhm.
completely organic, but now I'm more engaged in my family, and I'm doing it's just like multiplicative wins for me internally.
Mm.
And not to mention the fact that once the fire pit is done, and I did this very ornate kind of beautiful arrangement of the stones, um, the Chinese martial art that I do is where you walk in a circle. So I will be able to walk around the fire pit doing martial arts forms and, communing with nature at the same time.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I'm a big believer in miracles. So, like, I actually host an event once a year that's like a miracle event. I've done like Miracle Camp. The last
Oh, wow.
several have been miracle cruises where we just like gather together for the entire intent of see how many miracles we can like be a part
Oh,
of or
wow.
create. But
Yes.
like this is the gig that I tell people is like it's different than manifesting. You can't go into like miracle space and go, I want this, I'm going to manifest this. That's different. It's like you go in, and this is what I ask them. I'm like, go in with the intention of all things are possible. All things that can come in for your highest good are there and beautiful and allowed, and allow the universe, allow God, allow whatever to like bring in something like you didn't even know you freaking wanted. And we've
Yes.
had like crazy freaking stories, man, like crazy
Oh,
freaking
wow. Wow.
stories
Wow.
where like
Nice.
one of my friends was at a miracle camp like 2 years ago, 2 years ago. And she's like 40 years old. They'd never been able to have kids. The exact right circumstance happened at the camp where she was
Oh, my
able
God.
to adopt a baby. Like crazy stuff happens. I'm like,
Uh,
you have a child.
oh,
Like,
my
but like
God.
she had
Yes.
almost like gotten to the point where she had like given up. It was like, oh, but I'm gonna go into
Uh,
miracle camp and go, all things are possible. I'm gonna go
wow.
into this one space. And so like it's crazy the things that can happen when you allow alignment and higher good and not go into it with like it has to look like this. I think once we have like the it has to look like this, then all of a sudden like the possibilities go, oh, you're only willing to play at this level. When you go, no, no, I'm willing to like fully align. I'm willing to see
Yeah.
bigger possibilities. I'm willing to like for you to bring in things that I didn't even know I needed, wanted for my highest good. Also, crazy stuff happens.
Amazing.
Crazy
Amazing.
stuff happens. Okay, are you ready for a quick lightning round?
Yes. Sure.
Okay, cool. Quick. Three things somebody can do to their physical self that's going to increase their longevity.
Well, we know about the strength training. You
Mm-hmm.
got to lift the heavy weights. And then I I'll just give you this as a second one. Water, sleep, and greens. Water, sleep, green vegetables. And then the last one I'll give you. And so the last one is what we've kind of touched on and talked about for the past few minutes. And that is do something that is purely creative that just satisfies something in your soul, whatever that may be. Finger
Mm-hmm.
painting, go get some just get some clay, go if mowing the lawn, if you like mowing the lawn, like I like mowing the lawn. Everybody that everybody where I live has people mow their lawn for them. I refuse, but I love mowing my lawn. It's like I'm myself. I'm in it. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
if you can get that vibe, right? Like, no, I got to do this. Like, don't like back off. Get your strength training in. Water, sleep, and greens. Let your soul run free.
Okay. Favorite joke or bit from your stand-up comedy days?
um, so I grew up on an island. Let's see if I can screw this up. I grew up on an island in the middle of the Ohio River. I like to think of it as a cross between Huckleberry Finn and Eminem from 8 Mile, which means not only do I know how to fish, I also know how to cook crystal meth.
That is good.
It gets a laugh. It usually
It
gets
gets
a
a
laugh.
lot.
Yeah, yeah. A little out of context, but yeah, I grew up in a weird place. Oh my God, I love it. Neville Island. Look that up. It is an island. It's in the middle of the Ohio River, and I grew up
Wild.
there.
Wild. Okay, favorite place you've ever traveled?
Ooh, it's gonna be a toss up between. I'll tell you, it is Alaska, and I'll say because I went up there and I worked in the fishing industry, so that trip is part of the catalyst that kind of that cracked me open. I took this, summer of my sophomore year in college, I with a bunch of buddies went up and worked in Alaska, worked in the fishing industry. It was absolutely insane. And I read the book Shogun, a novel of Japan, while I was there. And that was kind of the genesis of why I walked into that martial arts school in my junior year of college.
Mm. Okay, last one. What makes you ridiculous?
I thought we had come up with this. What makes me ridiculous? There's so many things that make me ridiculous. Um, I I want to give you a really good one. I'm sorry, I'm being selfish here, just thinking it over. But goodness gracious, what makes me ridiculous? Other than everything that I've just shared with you over the past hour.
If you had to pinpoint one thing, you got to pinpoint one thing, and you're like, that's the thing.
It's that I really do think that sometimes you just got to rip out the umbilical. I mean, it's a pretty like graphic metaphor, but like you're sitting there and you're going back and forth and you're like, oh, this thing that I really, like you gotta just say, life's too short. Like go skydiving and jump out of the freaking plane. Like that's it. You know what I mean? Just get out
Mhm.
there and rip it out and go for it. And guess what? There's always a net. There's somebody there for you. There's a friend that's going to help pick you back up, and again, if you can get to that state of mind, it's not easy to get there, but it is. It's a jump. You get to that state of mind and then you get to have the adventure that your life is meant to be.
Mm. So, Adam, if people are listening right now and they're like, man, I want to see more of Adam, where can people find you?
So they can find me at Everest Longevity on Instagram, and you could always direct message me there. That's a quick and easy way. The website's Everest Longevity, and also on YouTube. It's Adam Shuty on LinkedIn if you want to connect on LinkedIn. And I've got a fun little app that I'm developing that gives you an insight
Mm.
to some of the things that we talked about. So if you go to everestperformancelab.com, you basically can interact with a lot of the concepts that I talked about today and get a little intro to things. And I think you can also message me through there as well. So yeah, everestperformancelab.com.
Cool. So find him on Insta, do some messaging there. Everest Performing Lab. That's where you're going to find
Performance.
info on
Yeah.
Performance Lab.
Yeah.
That's where you're
Sorry.
going to find information about the new upcoming app and everything you've got going there. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for joining us today. If this conversation cracked something open for you, made you laugh, reminded you that it's not too late to leap, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, share it with somebody who's ready to reinvent their lives. Join the Ridiculously You community and get the free newsletter at ridiculouslyu.com. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to come alive, especially the ridiculous parts. This has been Julie May, and thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Julie.
Share the spark, take it higher. Hit subscribe, bring a friend. Let the wildness never end.